all our residential streets to 40 kilometers an hour. We also think that additional traffic calming measures would be important. And as I believe the city of Boston came out with their report, one of the most important things was public education campaign with the reducing of the speeding and the additional traffic measures. And they felt the campaign was very important as well. We recognize the council has done work on reducing speed limits around town. What we're asking for is the council to consider a town-wide approach. People walk throughout this town and cycle throughout this town. We see traffic violations occurring all over town, and variable speed limits cause confusion for drivers, and isolated speed reductions is not enough, we feel. We want to see the whole city have a 40-kilometer speed limit in residential areas. We are a committee. We're just starting. We a little time ago, a couple years ago, we ordered these signs, slow down, kids at play. But we've only just begun, and we intend to also come back to council again. And thank you very much for considering this motion and our group and our thoughts, and you'll hear from us again. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Swire. Lots of good information there. I can tell you that our council is very concerned about traffic in our town, the safety of our pedestrians. I think we're trying to be more of a cycle-friendly town as well as we move forward, and we're certainly taking all of that you've given to heart. I don't know if any councillors want to make any further comment or question, Mr. Swire? No, but again, thank you for your presentation. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Taylor, let's do that.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's been a while since we've had a council meeting, so we've all forgotten how to use the equipment. Thank you, Mr. Swire. A couple of things. Maybe if I could ask a couple questions of you. First of all, I'm very interested in this. I've been involved in quite a few of these things as we go forward. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your organization of Kids at Play and how we would find out more information about that. And then a qualifying question for you about all streets at 40 kilometers an hour. I thought I heard you say it differently at different times in your presentation. Just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're talking about communities, like different subdivisions being 40 kilometers an hour, not Broadway all the way up and down or the through
That's
streets
correct,
being up and down. So it would be good to almost have a grid with an understanding of what you're actually proposing, something visual to see what that would be. And then I guess my next question would be, is it just your group who's proposing this? Have you done a petition? So one of the things that the rookie councillor has learned is you can't just go and do something without ensuring that you have en masse support for it. So is there mass support, and do you have documented evidence of such a thing?
Well, our group is, to answer your first question, our group consists of people that lived in the area for 10 to 15 years. We were slow to get started. We're starting to gain momentum and more seriousness of purpose in our meetings. We have talked about some of the things that you brought up, petitions. We've talked about other ways in which we could get people's attention. In regards to what I was saying there, I guess what we were really talking about is residential streets. Now, to study, we have not studied the grid in detail, but that is something we would be prepared to do. We have talked about getting perhaps involved in the transportation committee that I believe the council may be creating. So we are still in the exploratory stage. We thought it prudent to speak to the council. It is an issue that, while it might take us time to generate other people and a mass of concern, well, people are walking around these streets all the time, and the stories they're all over the place about. At Mocha Berries, I was just having a tea, and the woman on the desk was complaining about someone pulling a U-turn at Mill Street and Broadway, and high speeds at that point. So we think it's prudent to come and say, this is who we are. we are prepared to grow. We are prepared to become more organized. Thank you for your support, and it encourages me and our group to move forward.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. Very informative. The 40-kilometer, something I certainly would consider. I do caution you, though, stay away from the speed bumps, speed humps, that sort of thing. I don't think that's something we need in this town. But however, the speed limit thing, it's probably a good idea and certainly something this council can mull over, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to just follow back up. You get kicked out of the queue when you stop talking here. So, to me, I guess my answer to your whole statement would be, I don't know why anyone is in a hurry to get somewhere in Orangeville. To me, as a commuter, we drive back and forth, and there's speeds that we're experiencing on the 410 and whatnot. In the evenings or on a Saturday when you're enjoying Orangeville, I don't know why you're in a hurry. So, personally, I'd be very interested in understanding further what you're talking about. I think, though, the big caution for me is we need public input, and we would need a followership to be able to do that. If we had a followership, I think you'll find a lot of support on this council to be able to do something like that.
Thank you.
Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Swire, for the presentation and your support group behind you. I do think pedestrian and cyclist safety is a very important issue in this town myself as a pedestrian and cyclist. I'd like to point out that while the numbers speak for themselves in the presentation, that's of course only reported incidents. And I think, we can understand there's probably a double or tripling of that number that go unreported. So it is an issue. I'm glad to see that there's a bit of a groundswell at the community level to start this. I encourage you to gain membership, to keep discussing the issues, talking to different neighborhoods around town. And I would like to see sometime this term that town looks at a wide sort of strategy for the vehicle interactions with pedestrians and cyclists. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, and I will seek opportunities to speak to some of you about how we could move forward with our organization and get more people interested in our cause. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swire. You're welcome to talk to any of us. We're certainly, this is of great interest to all of us. Thank you.
Great.
One more, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just, I would encourage you, if you could follow up via email with the council and we could have your contact information,
Sure.
I'd be appreciative.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks again. Moving on to item number 8 on our agenda, statutory public meeting. Deputy Mayor McIntosh is going to look after the 515 Broadway presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Couple of procedures we need to announce before we start. Anyone who speaks and/or wants to be notified of further discussions on this topic by council to complete the notification list on the table, please. First, we'll start off with a presentation by town planning staff.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of council, residents in attendance, and those viewing from home. Tonight is the statutory public meeting to review and present planning development applications as submitted to the town for plan of subdivision, official plan amendment, and zoning bylaw amendment. The purpose of this meeting is to present the applications and the development proposal to members of council and the public, to receive any comments that members of council or the public may have, and to answer any preliminary questions regarding the status of these applications at this time and the process going forward. The applicants are also in attendance and will follow my presentation with one of their own, which will provide more detail concerning the particulars of their development proposal. The applicant has proposed a 6-story, 161-unit retirement home and 18 2-story townhouse dwellings on lands municipally known as 515 Broadway. These uses are not presently permitted in the town's official plan or zoning bylaw under the current policies and require amendments to these town documents in order for development to proceed. A plan of subdivision application would permit the lands as a whole to be divided into separate blocks to establish each of the uses on separate blocks on an overall plan. Highlighted in red are the boundaries of the subject lands, which comprise an overall land area of 3.66 hectares with 182.14 meters of lot frontage onto Broadway. While the overall property is quite large, the portion of the lands that are subject to development comprise approximately 1.53 hectares. A substantial portion of these lands are currently designated open space conservation lands and are proposed to remain undeveloped. Adjacent land uses include an existing dwelling to the west, commercial development to the east, and an existing dwelling, institutional, and open space uses to the south. The Orangeville-Brampton Railway Corridor is located to the north, or the top of this slide. Medium-density residential land uses are located further to the south on the west side of Sea Line. The lands contain a detached dwelling and accessory structures, which are proposed for demolition as part of the overall development concept. This aerial provides a clearer look at some of the existing natural heritage features on the property, notably woodlands, wetlands, and an existing pond feature. As part of the development applications currently under review, the applicant has submitted technical studies in support of the proposal, which include an environmental impact study, hydrogeological study, and hydraulic modeling. These are to be reviewed in consultation with Credit Valley Conservation to determine the appropriate boundaries of protection. The aerial photo also illustrates the portion of the property that is proposed as part of the development envelope, including a cleared area to the north and east of the lands, to the east of the existing pond feature, and abutting the rail corridor to the north. More details of the specifics of the site plan will be discussed shortly. This slide provides photos of some of the adjacent and surrounding development, as well as the interior wetlands and woodlands. It provides context to the property in terms of some of the surrounding development. One of the photos illustrates the existing intersection at Broadway and Sea Line and the existing private driveway, which is proposed to provide access to the development. The site plan is essentially separated into two parts: proposed residential land uses located on the north and east portions of the property, and environmental and open space conservation lands on the balance. Access to the proposed residential land uses are via a private driveway along the eastern property boundary. This driveway will provide access to the main routes of Broadway and Sea Line further to the south, which is a signalized intersection. An internal street extends to the west from the proposed townhouse dwellings to a surface parking area providing private parking for the use of residents of the retirement home. A total of 126 parking spaces are proposed, or 1 per 3 beds for the retirement home, and 2 per townhouse dwelling, which are to be provided in the driveway and garages. As noted earlier, the property is to include portions to the south, which are undeveloped and will remain in conservation use. Approximately 11.5% of the total area of the lot, or 27.6% of the developable portion, is to remain landscaped area. The existing land use designations in the official plan are low-density residential and open space conservation. The area designated for low-density residential land uses is shown in orange on this slide, and lands designated as open space conservation are highlighted in green. The official plan amendment application is seeking a redesignation of a portion of the property from low-density residential to medium-density residential to permit an apartment and townhouse dwellings and to increase the maximum permitted residential density. The applicant is also seeking to maintain the open space conservation designation, but refine the exact limits of this designation. This slide highlights the permitted uses and residential densities permitted in the current official plan designation on the property and the proposed official plan designation. The subject lands are zoned development D zone in the Town of Orangeville zoning bylaw. The D zone category on the lands permits the existing uses, buildings, and structures. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant has submitted the zoning bylaw amendment application to rezone the lands to a multiple residential medium density RM1 zone with special provisions on a site-specific basis. These special provisions include increasing the residential density to 148 units per net residential hectare, where the RM1 zone would otherwise permit a maximum residential density of 99 units per net residential hectare, increasing the maximum permitted building height from 14 meters to 29 meters, establishment of a site-specific parking rate, reductions to minimum required yards, and a site-specific definition of retirement home to reflect the specific project being proposed. An open space conservation OS2 zone is being proposed for the balance. A holding symbol is also to be applied to the lands and will require council approval prior to its removal in order to proceed with development. The applicant will be required to demonstrate the satisfactory servicing capacity, i.e. water and wastewater, is available to the property as a prerequisite to removing the holding symbol. Planning Division staff have received several comments from external agencies. These comments have been reviewed by town staff and have been made available to the applicant to address. Several town departments have also provided comments to Planning Division staff, and the applicant will be required to address these through the submission of additional information and through future circulations of plans, drawings, and reports. Planning Division staff have received 2 letters of objection to date. A second letter of objection was received this morning. Where appropriate, planning staff will work with the applicant to resolve and address the items brought forward by the residents and to acknowledge the areas where these comments can be incorporated into the final development plan. The applications remain at the early stages of review. Tonight is the first opportunity for council and members of the public to review and provide feedback to the applicant and staff on the nature of the development. Following the meeting tonight, Planning Division staff will consolidate any and all comments received and continue review of these applications toward the preparation and presentation of a report to council, which will include at that time a set of draft plan conditions, draft official plan amendment, and amending zoning bylaw. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have at this time. Thank you.
Over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I've had a chance to review all of these documents, and I think this is an unusual and creative use of the land. Our population is aging, and we need some additional long-term care or seniors facilities in Orangeville. So look forward to hearing more about this in the future, and thank you for your presentation.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, through you, Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Just a couple of questions regarding an observation, and again, echo the mayor's comments as well. I think that, you know, as our community is aging, we have others who are contemplating relocation here because of the amenities of our community, stressing, and I guess at this point, it's still just up for discussion, the idea of looking at affordable accommodations. I think that's very important to stress to those that are developing this project. Having been a frequent patron to the properties that are on the east side of that property, noticing the design, and again, it's preliminary, and we'll go through your department to obviously have further discussion on the design of exiting and entering that location. I've noticed a significant amount of traffic that in fact happens to be at that particular corner if it's going south. And I don't know if there's an opportunity for consideration to relocate that entrance point, because I noticed that there's some sensitive parts of the land itself. But again, just a point of reference that I'm not sure if any traffic count has been done, but I noticed that when you're coming in the entrance point further east, most people will not be exiting out of that location. The Green Apple Cafe, for example, is identified as kind of that entry point. There's also, I guess, an RBC ATM. Noticing a lot of traffic that happens to be going in, but they have difficulties exiting, so everybody converges into that one location where there's a stop sign, or at least intersection with the illuminated stoplights. So my point is just a recommendation based on the observation that that might be something for consideration for those that are developing this project.
Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, if I could ask just one specific question. It relates to the parking rate for the apartment building. I was curious why the site-specific value of 1 per 3 units. Why do you need a site-specific bylaw? Because as I understand it, the current zoning regulations for that use would also be 1 per 3 units. So is there something behind that we need to know, or?
And through you to Councillor Peters, through you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, the application simply has requested a reduction and a site-specific parking calculation. We'll have to delve, quite honestly, more into that. In my review, you're absolutely right. 1 per 3 is the standard, and 2, which they've achieved. I suspect the applicant may be looking at having a visitor parking requirement, or that's what we might see in situations like this. But certainly the applicant is here too, they can answer that, but that is an outstanding question for us as well. We've included it just for reference for council and the public though at this point.
Understood. Thank you.
Councillor Post.
Thank you. My question related to parking as well. In looking at the plan and looking at the townhouse portion, I see that there is a fair number of parking spaces. However, what I don't see on the plan, and I'm not sure if I'm just missing it, is there a spot for visitor parking designated right now? Because I don't see it on there. And again, just to follow up with what Councillor Andrews had said as well, the entrance into the subdivision looks like it's maybe a bit precarious. So I would like some clarification on that as well.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, again, that could, I think, could probably be clarified by the applicant. I suspect that the parking ratio may also have something to do with the visitor parking ratio. Whether one's been established at this point is obviously not clear to me at this point. Perhaps leaving open the availability to have visitor parking is perhaps what the applicant is thinking in that way. And absolutely, you're correct. On the site plan, there is no defined visitor parking area per se. So that would be something staff would be looking at for clarification on as well.
Councillor Sherwood.
Through you, Chair McIntosh, to Mr. Dixon. I wanted to refer back to the request for the permitted density going to 148 units in compared to our maximum residential density of 99 per units. The 50 extra units kind of scares me in a little way here, kind of petrifies me, and I'm just wondering, I see this as a wish of the developer, but will staff be providing any type of guidance to us as to whether we think that this is going to work? And like, is this just a matter of because of the retirement home and the number of people that will be there, that's why that request is? Or can we remove one floor to bring it closer to our actual maximum density? I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I'm just a little scared of that extra 50.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Sherwood, I guess the answer to all of your questions is yes. The 148, actually, the genesis of the 148 is because it is a retirement home, our official plan does permit in the high-density residential designation 148 units per net residential hectare. The applicant is extracting that permission that would otherwise be afforded if they were a high-density designation and placing it in the medium-density designation category. Other than that, the site-specific official plan amendment that they are seeking, other than the uses of apartment and townhouse, are the only amendments they're making to the official plan. Is there a possibility to reduce the residential density on the site? There always is, and yes, as staff, we will be providing guidance to council through our future staff report to council as to whether or not we feel that density is appropriate from a professional planning perspective. So yes, to all your questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry for the back and forth. Has staff considered how the transit system may or may not interact with this property, given that obviously increasing ridership is a mandate of the town, and given the population of this type of building, has staff considered how those systems interact on this property? And if so, could you provide some insight?
Sure. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, we actually had early in our discussions with the applicant, we had discussed potential for the ridership as the proposed residents are senior residents, proposed for senior residents. We discussed the opportunities for transit, and that was a focus of ours before the application was submitted, and how accessible that this site would be given the proposed use. We need a bit more information on that. We need some additional information not only from the applicant, but internally too. Will require some support from a transit point of view in terms of analysis as to whether or not transit, as in its current form, is viable and whether it's available to the level that it will need to be in order to truly serve the site. So we will be looking for more information on that before bringing back a report to council.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess my one question is, in my mind, there's another building in there. Kurtz's Millworks is in there. Does that stay?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, the Kurtz's building is to the rear, to the east and to the rear of the site, on the opposite side of the rail corridor. So aside from lands that are shown to include the private driveway, the remainder of that property is unaffected.
So through you, Deputy Mayor, has that person been consulted? Are they aware that there's?
That person being in the circulation area for the application is aware of the application.
And we've heard nothing?
We have received some feedback from area residents. Yeah.
And it's positive? They're thrilled that they're getting this big development right by them?
Well, yeah. I think the comments are the public record. We've summarized all comments in the planning report.
Yeah.
On the agenda.
No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Dixon.
Thank you.
I now ask Deb, and I have to be careful with this last name, Kakaria? I just call you Deb, it'd be a lot easier. From MHBC Planning Limited. Yes.
Hi, good evening. Deb Kakaria from MHBC. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, and as well with me is Michael Melcher. Matthew, sorry. He's the president of Primacare, who will be the operator for the residential. And I suggested that Michael perhaps just speak quickly with council, as council, I'm assuming, may be interested in who will be the eventual operator of the retirement facility. And Matthew has quite a bit of experience across Ontario with retirement facilities, so I thought that might help everyone, council and the public as well.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, councillors, Chief Morden, city staff. I thank you for the honor of allowing myself to introduce our family, the Melchior family, who hopes to be able to have the opportunity to create this residence here in Orangeville. In 1948, my father started our business, which was pure construction at that point in time. I'm the second generation custodian of an initiative and an enterprise that was started by him. We've had the privilege of operating here in the province of Ontario since 1948, and particularly have developed an expertise in seniors housing since 1996. Primacare is an operator of seniors housing and has been involved with the development of seniors housing, as I said, in many communities in this great province. We have developed in Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, Brampton, London, multiple occasions. We have a project active in Peterborough, another we're pursuing in Clapperson's Corners / Waterdown near Hamilton, or part of the municipality of Hamilton, and we are very excited about the opportunity we believe presented at this site. We have been pursuing this site for some 4 years and been into some interaction with the good city staff here, and we thank them for their cooperation trying to look at this opportunity, which we believe is idyllic for seniors. As I said, our experience is in all forms of seniors housing, both assisted living, independent living, memory care, and long-term care. I would like to also point out that we believe that this location is what seniors deserve. What I mean by that is they deserve the best, and this location provides what we believe are some wonderful attributes that will improve the quality of the residential experience for the seniors, and that is what attracted us to this site. I will not deal with the technical matters. I will throw the baton to someone who's a lot more competent than I, but I thank you very much for the opportunity for allowing me to address this council, and I look forward to working along with city staff and the council as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll try not to repeat a lot of what's already been covered off, thankfully, with staff already in their presentation. And there's quite a bit of information, as you well have probably already reviewed in the staff report. And again, it was, thank you for the comprehensive review. Essentially, there is, what is proposed is a 6-story retirement building. You can see it in yellow. The slide above shows it's consisting of 148. That's a typo. It's 161 units. The 18 2-story townhouse units within the 4 blocks are in the orange. And the proposed parking, there will be 2 spaces per unit for the townhouse units. And as mentioned by staff and discussed by council, intended for 1 space per 3 beds. That is a density that, or a number of parking spaces that have been deemed appropriate on some of the other sites that Matthew has developed as well, and that has been deemed to be and demonstrated to be appropriate. That's why, and we had to land on a number. It has varied across other municipalities, so we wanted to put something forward and make it clear what the expectation would be for parking. We are certainly will continue to work with staff and sort through any of the issues or concerns with that. The one thing on this site that I think really deserves attention is the majority of the site currently is designated low-density residential, with exception of sort of a small strip of, that doesn't work, but I don't know if I can, oh, sure. So just along the western edge of the site is open space. What this proposal essentially does is it will protect approximately, roughly 60% of the site for open space, and protect some of the natural features that have been identified with appropriate setbacks. I know that the applicant has been working for 3+ years with the Credit Valley Conservation to bring forward this application. There's been a lot of work already done to date to bring forward a proposal that respects protection of those features and that open space. And really what essentially it does is it pushes the developable area into that northeast corner. And in order to make the development viable, it's also looking at a higher density. The density is measured based on the developable area and doesn't take into account all of the environmental open space. So this is sort of the typical thing that we try to, I think as planners, try to aim for, is protecting open space, large areas like this, and natural features that warrant their protection. At the same time, create densities that are that help support existing infrastructure that has been made available at this site for both municipal water and municipal sanitary. So that's what we're trying to do. That's what the provincial plan policy also mandates, is that we increase density on areas that are in urban areas that have the infrastructure in place, and at the same time balancing that with a proper protection of environmental space. So really this is, I think, a really good example of that, and at the same time bringing forward a facility that will support the long-term care for your aging population. Won't take too much time going through this. Again, just a run through of some of, there's been a lot of work done. I know some of the reports had been mentioned by staff, but you can see there's a broad range of urban design brief, photometric study, environmental noise and vibration, other things that weren't mentioned, but there's been a lot of thorough analysis done on this proposal. Just overall, the site, the proposal will revitalize a currently underused property, and it will provide, as I mentioned, intensification and reinvestment within the community, and by providing retirement facilities with the town. It incorporates a high-quality design into the elevations as shown, and we continue to work with staff to work out any details. It's sustainable development, and it includes a lot of low-impact development measures, which provides for infiltration. It provides a good built form between the transition between the townhouse units as well as the senior facility, and as well it is compatible with the adjacent uses within the surrounding area. And it respects the existing natural features and environment. So just cruising through. The baby boomer generation is beginning to enter into the retirement age, creating an increasing need for seniors' housing facilities and communities. And within Orangeville, the seniors make up for 15% of the total population, and an increase of 38% between 2011 to 2016. And we expect this trend to continue to grow as more of the baby boomer generation enters into retirement age. We feel this proposal responds to this by seeking to permit a senior living development, and it allows, as Matthew has explained, a range of retirement uses, provides for that continuum of care that will support seniors throughout their retirement years to meet their various needs. There's a considerable amount of focus been placed on landscaping as well, obviously as part of the experience for a retirement facility like this. And it also provides for a good separation between both the retirement facility and the townhouse units. And it provides for compatible species with a smooth transition from the more structured landscaping to the more natural open space buffers. You can see, again, the red areas are the areas that are proposed for restoration that are within the setback buffer. And the purple areas are the areas that are proposed for additional restoration works in the setback buffer, and as well the yellow is supplementary. So all of these areas are restoration areas with different levels of restoration that we have put forward as part of the plan as well. And then these are some basic elevations. More details of that will be addressed through the site plan approval process. And that's the townhouse development elevations. That concludes my presentation. If there's any, I did want to just note, just to respond to some of the questions that were raised already, perhaps by council. I've mentioned about the density, the number of units. It does allow for a viable development, and given it provides for the maximum utilities for residents. It allows for that to, sorry? Okay. It also, it is in the official plan for seniors for a senior's use to allow for a higher density. And as well, it takes into account, as I mentioned, the open space. The open space lands are not taken into or factored into that calculation, which bumps up the amount of units per hectare. I mentioned the parking. Transit, the applicant is working with the traffic engineer that is Triton, who we understand works for the town on other projects, and we will continue working with them on possible solutions for transit.
Thank you very much. Before we take questions from council, I just want to add that during my campaigning over the last year, seniors housing was one of the most talked about items.
Great.
So this certainly does fit the bill. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor McIntosh, and through you to those that are presenting. And again, thank you very much for the thoroughness of your presentation. Certainly encouraged by what I see. Again, as Deputy Mayor McIntosh has talked about the residents of our community and those that are also considering coming into our community. The concept, I really embrace it. Again, those of us who happen to have aging parents are looking at alternative ways to support their activity, and certainly considering, the opportunities that exist in our community and future opportunities. But there was a point that, a couple of things. First of all, I really appreciate the time and consideration that you've put into this regarding the green space. Mm-hmm. I think it's very important. No doubt further dialogue is going to happen with the CBC and through the planning department, and that's encouraging to see. There was something that you had mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, and again, I hope I didn't mishear you, but you ended up saying that there was a typo. And you said something about 148 and then 161. What does that reference? Is that what you were planning prior, or is that the number of units that you're actually
So
requesting?
there's, yeah, that's the number of units, and then the density is 148
Okay.
units per hectare.
Okay, so you're talking 161, the number of units, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, a couple of questions. I'll start with the occupancy. Could you describe the anticipated occupancy both of the apartment building in terms of the mix of long-term care versus other uses? And in relation to that, do you anticipate that the users of the townhomes will be eventual users of the retirement home? Is it planned more of a campus, a staged sort of approach, or are those sort of free market buildings?
It will be free market, but my understanding is that the idea would be that that would allow for a continuum. Say the daughter lives in the townhouses and the mother lives, it allows the opportunity for a family to live close by to perhaps their elders.
Right.
But I'll let Matthew answer that first question.
Thank you.
One of the greatest tragedies with seniors is when couples have been together for 50 years and one party has to go in a residence and the other party is living far away and has mobility challenges. One of the reasons why we are excited about the concept of having the townhouses near the residence is there could be an opportunity whereby there is someone who is more infirm and therefore is in the residence, and someone who's, more, shall we say, more capable, probably wrong word, but they will be able to habitate the townhouses, so therefore we don't have the tragedy of a couple that's been married for 50 or 60 years where one spouse is on one side of town and the other spouse is on the other side of town. Additionally, there's the opportunity, and that's why they're not designated only as seniors, whereby someone who is a caregiver working in the facility may want to live in proximity to where they work. So therefore, the townhouses provide that opportunity as well. I know that's the opposite end of the spectrum, but what we've tried to do with the proposal is we've tried to think of possibilities. One of the earlier remarks was the baby boomer generation, which is quite different, in fact, than the generation that lived through the war. Their requests and wants are somewhat different. The second part of your question was, I believe, through the chair, of course, the issue of the mix of uses within the building. There is, as we've respectfully submitted, multiple uses contemplated from independent living through to memory care and long-term care. We have not designated at this point in time what the exact mix is. The science of seniors housing at this point is to integrate a mixture of uses, the idea being that A, there's the age-in-place concept, B, which one other concept that a lot of people don't talk about is peer-to-peer supports. So if you have an individual who is more infirm and perhaps another individual who's more mobile, they will provide peer-to-peer supports. So what we try to do when contemplating the suite mixture in a building is we contemplate what we think will occur for the population. And some of that we get from demographic information from the demographers. Some of that's our experience, and quite frankly, some of it's black magic. There is no perfect answer on it.
Right. And if I could, one quick follow-up, well, not related actually. I understand you're keeping the developed area to a minimum, and given the nature of the property at the moment, I commend that certainly. I wondered if the team had considered underground parking, both from an accessibility perspective as well as reduced development footprint and thus salt, stormwater issues, that sort of thing. I understand it's a greater cost. I'm just sort of trying to see if that had come to the table yet.
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, through the chair, with regards to underground parking, everybody knows there is a cost associated therewith. And the greatest challenge we have as participants in the seniors housing industry is trying to provide an opportunity for seniors to have the best possible accommodation in the space they occupy at a cost point that doesn't get stratospheric. It already is too expensive. We understand that. We know that. But unfortunately, it does cost a lot of money to provide the services necessary. So underground parking was not contemplated on a cost basis. Somewhat related to an earlier remark regarding density, if I could, through the chair. One of the reasons why we need 160 units is to provide the ability to spread that cost over a greater number of units. The easiest example is if you have a chef and you divide his cost by 160 versus 120 or 140, it becomes more affordable. There is one additional reason why the 160 number is important. We have put down here as a request the long-term care status for use. And there is an anticipated but not announced proposal call by the province of Ontario for additional long-term care beds. The long-term care style occupancy is extremely technical. There's a design guideline published by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. And the basic elements of it is that you build in 32-bed modules, and those modules total up to 160 to get an efficient building. So we didn't pick that number just airy-fairy, but rather in contemplation of the possibility, which we don't know, A, when that proposal's coming out, B, if we would win if we made that application, and C, if we would get 160 beds. But we're mindful that that's an efficient model for the purposes of that long-term care use.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions from council, I invite questions or comments from the public. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, do you have any comments on the submissions from the public? Have you had a chance to see them? Deb, yeah.
I only saw the one that was part of the council agenda.
Okay.
Which was dated September 2018, there we go. Sorry, so we did see the letter that was part of the council agenda. It was dated September 2018. It's the folks that we share the driveway with. My understanding, the applicant's been working with them quite closely, and I believe that they're here today, so hopefully we're doing a good job. The second, we have not seen the second objection letter, so we will get that from staff as soon as possible.
Just one other point, which I think is somewhat part of some of the remarks by the public. We believe that what's being proposed here is driving everybody to the signalized intersection, which makes it safer. So some of those traffic concerns that were discussed in some of the submissions and of course in some of the appropriate questions that came back, I think what we believe in contemplation with professional traffic engineers are better addressed through directing traffic to the signalized exchange or signalized interchange, excuse me, which makes it safer. Respectfully submitted.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, what would we like to do? Do we have a motion?
Motion to accept the report.
Okay, by Grant. Second, Lisa. Councillor Post. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, moving along in our agenda, we're going to go to item 8.2. This is proposed building permit fee bylaw. We have a recommendation that the report be received. May I have a motion for that? Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Sherwood. All in favor? Is there a presentation on this, Madam Clerk? Yes? Mr. Ewald?
Thank you, Your Worship. In accordance with the Building Code Act, the Town of Orangeville charges fees for building permits on a cost recovery basis. Specifically, sufficient monies are to be collected to offset all operating costs associated with the administration of the building code in the Town of Orangeville. The current fee schedule has been in place since 2012, and thus it is appropriate to update it at this time. The Building Code Act requires that a public meeting be held to solicit public input on proposed changes to building permit fees. Following consideration of any public input that there may be, Council will be asked to pass a bylaw to update the building permit fees charged by the town. Thank you.
Okay. I had one comment to make, Mr. Ewald, and I did speak with Mr. Brennan earlier today about this. The permit fee costs associated with basement apartments was in the same cost range. I think it was exactly the same actually as new construction at $13.03 per square meters. I'm just wondering, in the current environment that we're in right now regarding affordable housing, hoping that we can encourage conversion of basements to safe and legal apartments. Wondering if town staff could maybe look at some sort of process where we could provide grants or some help, you know, to those who are applying for secondary apartments. And again, this was in consultation with Mr. Brennan earlier today. There are other municipalities that are doing it. I'm wondering if we can charge staff with maybe to come back to us with any other municipalities that might be doing similar types of things, and to see if we can afford to help our residents if they're converting basement apartments.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not aware of any programs that other municipalities are operating. It's certainly something that can be looked into. The $13.03 a square meter is what that current fee has been since 2012, so it hasn't increased. I've kept it the same. But we can certainly look at whether or not there are any grants available out there.
Well, we'd have to create one, I guess,
Yeah.
but I mean, I'm just looking at some way to incentivize people to move forward with converting basements to apartments if possible. That's what I'm asking. So hoping you can maybe come back in the future to us with some ideas that might have been used in other municipalities. Thank you. Councillor Sherwood.
Mayor Brown, just to add on to where I think you're going with this, I'm wondering when it comes to the basement apartments, if we consider rather the $13.03 as a new construction or major renovation, if it could fall under the category of the $7 per for considering it as a minor alteration. Mm-hmm. Just something to consider rather than a program, maybe categorizing it in a different category?
Mm-hmm. As it was explained to me, Councillor Sherwood, today, building permit fees are to be on a cost recovery basis, if I believe. Is that correct, Mr. Jones or Mr. Ewald? And therefore, the requirement may be to leave it as it is, but to look at a grant process where applicants would, and again, we'd have to develop something here with council, but I think we need to encourage in some way people to look at providing safe and legal basement apartments. And if there's anything that this council can do, I'd like to look at it. But Mr. Jones, any further thoughts there?
Through you, Your Worship, my only thought was that if this is something that council wants to proceed with, it would be appropriate to pass a motion to that effect.
Right. Well, let's all think about it, and maybe at a future meeting we might go down that road. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ewald, for your presentation. Okay, we're moving on now to item 8.3, which was recreational facilities and parks user rates and fees. This is, we need a recommendation, a motion to receive this information. Okay, Councillor Andrews, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. let me back up. There's, I apologize. Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In general, I support the report. I think a lot of work has gone into it. I also understand that these will all be revisited during the master planning process. Two items I wanted to bring up, and I guess we can decide whether or not to address them immediately or not. The first is the super seniors rate. So there's a few areas where that rate, to catch up with others and be in relative course with the regular seniors rate, if you will, is quite a jump. I don't have the examples right in front of me, but you know, that super senior category is for 80 plus, as I understand it, and I think we should be making every effort to have that section of the population be active and get them into our facilities. And so that's sort of one thing I'd like to discuss further, either later with the Community Services Department, or perhaps now if other councillors have a comment on it. And the second one I'll just throw out there is, currently, as I understand it, the walking track is still $1 to use at the Alder facility. In speaking with Mr. Osmond, that can either be done through the desk or through the donation box. It's obviously a very modest cost, but again, I think that's a facility that should be open, available to anybody at any time. It could potentially reduce a little bit of administrative burden. I think it's another way to get people into the building, moving around the building. Certainly, it's maybe not intuitive all the time that you have to pay. In some facilities you do and don't, depending on the municipality. As I understand, it's a very modest sort of fee generator. And I think, again, to get more people into that facility and using it, we're seeing the mall potentially come to a different shape. You know, that's a place where people like to walk around for free. I think the walking track would be a good alternative. And again, for a very modest dip in revenues. I'll let Mr. Osmond comment if he has further, or fellow council members, but just wanted to make those comments before we pass anything.
Right. Mr. Osmond?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Grant and Council. The modest rate, you're correct, that we've been applying over the years for the track has been in place for a number of years. As I said earlier, one of the things that can happen when you're doing a program like this, if you want to take a low-cost program, make it a no-cost program, it gives you access to facilities, and it includes a lot of people that may not normally get included, and it is no cost or low cost to do that. If you wanted to take that actual fee out of the rates and fees, then you would certainly make a motion to do that, and you can very well do that. In terms of cost to the revenue or decrease in revenue, we're looking at roughly $3,600 on a year. One of the things we do with the track itself, or the walking track itself, is we cross-program that with other programs. So it's part of a fitness pass, it's part of a recreation pass, and so on. It wouldn't impact that much because we allow the walking track to complement what a person does when they come to the fitness program. Earlier you mentioned that we're just going to receive this. In fact, we've advertised it. We've gone through that process in the public and through our community groups, and we're now in a position to get council approval.
Very good, sir. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Osmond. I was wondering what type of billing mechanism is the staff currently using to bill the user groups for participants that are out of town? In other words, the 20% non-resident fee. We know that it's not just our youth sports, hockey, baseball fields. There could be adult programs that are being ran, and I know. I just want to know what is the mechanism for billing to ensure that we're covering that extra 20% for out of town patrons?
Your Worship, through you to Councillor Sherwood. First of all, we applied the 20% to instruction-led programs, such as swimming lessons or fitness classes, that kind of thing. We apply a 20% surcharge. Our system under Perfect Minds is integrated with GIS. So when a person comes in to register and they get an out-of-town address, it automatically applies to 20%. Likewise, if we do a rental and someone comes in to have a rental that's from outside the community, we apply the 20% surcharge. So it's done through our Perfect Mind system, billing system.
just to follow up on that, Mr. Osmond, I think I'm more specifically thinking of the large picture where I'm going to take minor hockey. Please don't think I'm attacking you personally. But minor hockey, there could be people from outside the area that are using that. We're already giving them a youth, like a registered minor group reduction compared to the prime. What are we doing to ensure that we are still recouping that 20% for those children that are enrolled in that? Or is, my understanding is that the Hockey Association is billing that, but how is the town receiving that revenue?
Your Worship, through Councillor Sherwood, is a bit of an issue, I guess, because in terms of the sport community, minor hockey is an example, or soccer, any of those large groups, they will tell you they do not apply the 20% surcharge. They may charge some of them outside an higher level. We don't get that. We don't have the information that says that they actually do apply that 20%. We tried over the last few years to get to 20% from groups. The issue we have is that under insurance, they won't give us the names of the various members of the organization, and they don't have to release the names. So it's difficult to determine whether or not they have 10 or 20 or 200 people that are kids in a program that are from outside of Orangeville. So we apply the rate that we have in our system for the ice rental, and we don't get the actual names of residents or children, or whatever the case would be, in a sport program to us. They don't give us the actual names. So that's been an issue for a long number of years here in Orangeville, and it's very difficult to get the names and have them to provide us with their names under the privacy rules.
Councillor Sherwood is a former president of the Minor Hockey Association. I think these rates are competitive with other municipalities, and I think the income that is brought in by the Minor Hockey Association, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Osmond, is probably the largest source of revenue from Parks and Rec perspective, and they you know, historically have tried to identify out-of-towners and charge an extra rate, but in the whole scheme of things, the revenue was, you know, at the time when I was involved, was in the order of $500,000 a year. I don't know if it's changed much, Mr. Osmond, but minor hockey puts a lot of money into Parks and Recreation programs. So, do you have any further to say there, Mr. Osmond?
Your Worship, you're correct. The minor hockey is, of course, our biggest client. It also should be said that the minor hockey rate, or the rate we apply to minor hockey, is extremely competitive in the communities in our surrounding area, Caledon and so on, Centre Willington, places to the north. We are very competitive. The rates that we have in minor hockey, and I should also make a note that the recovery rate that we have, the recovery rate on the books for Orangeville is roughly 41%, which was set in 2011. Right now, we're recovering at almost 60%. And this is one of the reasons why we want to revisit the actual rates and fees in the master plan, to get better feedback from the municipality, from residents, and from community groups on such things as, for instance, the surcharge, whether it is a surcharge that continue or how it actually works, and if we can apply different models to how we do rates and fees.
Right. Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to the new Parks and Rec master plan review in the next year or so. Very good. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, to Mr. Osmond, and again, also the staff that were involved. Thank you for the detail that not only you and Ms. Doherty have put into this, doing comparatives. Very important to take a look at what's happening in other markets, and I really compliment you on the amount of information. But just curious, page 53, this would be the Town Hall multipurpose. This is actually the room that we're in, which is the council chambers when we're hosting a council meeting. But again, being a patron for the Winter Farmers Market, just curious, what fee, is that something that you can provide us that would have been charged to be that the farmers market, and will this new fee apply to their activities, be that in the Winter Farmers Market moving forward?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Andrews, a good question.
Not to put you on the spot, but it just...
One of the things we're reviewing, in actual fact, is how we apply rates to organizations that we have pretty much under our umbrella, if you would, as a council and as a community, such as the BIA. At this point, we don't apply a rental rate to the BIA for this particular space. And it's something that we would take a look at in going forward. I will tell you that the demand, since we opened this space here, for community groups outside of the ones that we actually operate with within house, is becoming on quite high. So we're quite impressed with that. The idea of having a rate, one of the reasons why we applied a rate is because we have to have staff here. We have to have extra janitorial costs. So we're applying the rate based on our actual cost of providing the service. So we're going with this rate. And again, we need to revisit that in 2 years to see how it works out.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Osman. I'm looking through page 50, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask on behalf of the 45-year-old beer league hockey-playing gentleman, who I hope are watching and give me credit for asking the question. But it doesn't look like, I don't see it here, and when I talk to these gentlemen, they tell me they're playing at 1 a.m. or it's quite late. It looks like it ends at 11. So I'm just curious, is there another rate that I'm just not seeing on here for these gentlemen who are playing, and what is that rate? It's just perhaps not clear to me.
Prime time base rate, then the number one line item there, I believe.
It says 5 to 11, and I think those leagues play, late. That's it?
Yeah, our prime time is 5 to 11. If we go beyond 11 o'clock or into past 12 in the evening, then we do have a small discount for that, yes.
Oh, so that's what I'm asking.
But our leagues don't go beyond 11 o'clock at this point. There would be an exception to go beyond 11 o'clock.
So I'm sorry, I thought I heard two things there. So you said sometimes they play after that time and there's an exception, and then you said they end at 11. So I apologize. So I'm thinking about there's a group of gentlemen that play late at night, and I just don't see that rate here on this sheet.
Yes, there is one organization that goes from 10:30 to 11:30. So there's an half an hour. They go into a half an hour break. Different rate for that half an hour. But primarily, we have a prime rate that goes goes from 5 until 11 or 11:30. In this case, it's 11:30. Sharon, I'm just correct if I'm wrong. Yeah.
So does that go to the sell-off rate then at that point, or not?
Just going to double check.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I just would have to double check that with Karen Hunter, Facilities Coordinator. She takes care of all of the bookings. I know actually I was just having a discussion with her earlier today that there is a group that is in from 10:30 to 11:30. I would have to double check to see if they get that discount after 11 p.m. But Mr. Mayor is correct in that they would be charged the prime time rate. The proposed 2019 rate would be $228.65 per hour.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps you can get back to Councillor Taylor, or maybe even email the council. That'd be great. Thank you. Councillor Sherwood.
Okay, I promise not to keep going on and dwelling on this out-of-town rate, but I just want to bring up the fact that and it's just a comment, we charge out-of-town users 20% more to get a library, like for the library services. So I think it's fair that we review this for everything that we're offering our facilities for out-of-town residents to pay a little bit more.
Okay, duly noted. We'll ask staff to look at that. Thank you. All right, so we had a motion to receive this information. I don't think we voted on receiving it. So in fact, if I'm correct, Mr. Osmond, accepting this means we're implementing the user fee guidelines as you've set out here. Is that correct? Okay, let's have one more comment from Councillor Peters.
Just because it has to do with the motion, I don't remember who made it or who seconded it, but I would ask for an amendment regarding the walking track if it was appropriate. If not, then obviously I will concede.
Okay. Do we have Did somebody make a motion and second it, I
Yes,
believe?
it was moved by Councillor Andrews, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Right. Okay, so we're going to check with Madam Clerk here. We're asked for an amendment here. Is this the appropriate time then to vote on?
Certainly, if the mover and seconder are willing to accept it as a so-called friendly amendment, then it would be to reduce the cost of using the walking track to zero, essentially, is what you're asking?
Okay, so we're going to need a seconder for that amendment. Anybody like to do that? I'm sorry?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. If they're willing to accept it as a friendly amendment, we can just
Okay.
incorporate it into the original motion.
Okay. We have Mr. Taylor would like to comment, so I'll ask Mr. Taylor.
So just as a point of clarification, Your Worship, this would be just until the period of time as we get the study for recreation, and post that, this will be reviewed as part of that document and maybe moot. So we're voting on
That
something.
is my understanding.
We're voting for something that is 6 months in play or
Well,
so.
I think it's going to be a year probably before, it's going to be spring of 2020
Okay.
before your recreation plan.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Can I make an amendment to the amendment?
Let's hear it.
Could we have a donation box? Just like it is now, it's almost on a, an honor system, so, somebody may feel they want to pay $5 to walk the track, but other people may feel they want to pay nothing, that was okay.
Okay, so from a technical standpoint, that currently somebody walks into the facility, wants to use the track, they may go to the front desk and ask and pay $1. And this amendment would then require town staff to say it's free, go ahead. That's what you're saying, Mr. Peters, is that correct? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Andrews is in the queue first, so go ahead, sir.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship, and again, out of curiosity, what would be the financial impact if we end up going down that path of, not
3,600, I believe, is what
Okay.
was said earlier.
All right.
$3,600.
And I do end up agreeing with Deputy Mayor McIntosh's point there, the idea of keeping the donation box there. I think that's just a nice way of at least acknowledging the fact that we have a spot here where people are using it, and if they feel compelled to put in $1, $2, or $5, or $10, or $20, and maybe we'll hit that $3,600 mark. So,
Okay. Councillor Peters.
Thank you. I'll just quickly wrap up. Yeah, I certainly agree with the Deputy Mayor. The point was more about the attitude toward the use of that track, and perhaps the signage would be modified accordingly. But certainly, we're always open to people contributing to the facilities, and as they use our amenities, giving that back. But I think the direction I was hoping to set and the tone, I suppose, was that that's a very low maintenance facility, and one that we should be encouraging people to use. And it has other benefits that roll out as a result. So,
Right.
yeah, happy with the change to the language.
I think you made a very good point about Orangeville Mall, changing its layout in the next little while. Right. So there aren't many places to walk indoors in the wintertime, so it's a good thought. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor with a friendly amendment to reduce the cost of the walking track fee by $1 to $0. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, moving on. We have item 10.1, staff report, Arts and Cultural Committee Reserve. This is a recommendation that report ED 2019-3 regarding Arts and Culture Committee Reserve be received. Council authorized the transfer of all remaining funds within the Arts and Culture Reserve Fund to the Economic Development Operating Budget under Culture Development and Marketing budget line. The funds be utilized to maintain existing arts and culture programs. Staff be directed to incorporate this increased funding to the 2020 Economic Development Operating Budget submission for Council's consideration. I have a question. How much money is being transferred? Can Mr. Osmond enlighten us?
We're looking at, Your Worship, I think we're looking at roughly $6,000 now in reserve. Is the amount that's there. We'll transfer it over, and it's designated to go into the mailbox or the utility box, hard work and so on. So it's for this year, it's taken care of, but if we want to do it in 2020, we'd have to come back and put it in the budget process.
Okay, very good. We have a motion, Councillor Peters, motion seconded by Councillor Post. All in favor of receiving this? Passed unanimously. Okay, on to 10.2. This is committees of council, and this is regarding our terms of reference for the various committees that the council has determined will be in play during the next year and further. I'll read this. That council approve the terms of reference attached to this report, bless you, for the following committees: Access Orangeville Seniors Committee, and again, Business and Economic Development Advisory Committee, Committee of Adjustment, Council Remuneration Review Committee, Cultural Plan Task Force, Fire Service Advisory Committee, Heritage Orangeville, Orangeville Sustainability Advisory Committee, and the Property Standards Appeal Committee / Dog Designation Appeal Committee. And the staff be directed to advertise to recruit applicants, which has already happened, and that staff provide the applications to council for consideration at a closed meeting on April 1st. And the council approve the disbandment of any previously existing committees not included in the committee policy. Let's have some conversation here. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. I was just wondering if on the second last paragraph of the recommendation, it's saying that staff approved the applications at the closed meeting on April 1st. Due to medical reasons, I will not be attending the April 1st council meeting. And I was wondering, as the representative for Heritage Orangeville, would council be willing to defer the appointment of those people to possibly the April 15th meeting, when I hope I should be back to attend?
Exclusively for the Heritage Committee, of which you are a member of.
Just for the Heritage, for which I'm the council member.
Well, personally, I don't see that that would be an issue. I think that we're all in agreement. So I think we can amend this then to exclude Heritage Orangeville and push that on to an April 15th meeting. So may I have a motion to accept this? Councillor Post, seconded by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Peters.
Thank you,
My
Mr. Mayor.
apologies.
Sorry to be the thorn in the collective side here.
That's fine.
It's a very minor point, but speaking about the Sustainability Committee and sort of the work they've done and the importance I think we all value in both that committee and the town initiatives moving forward. Over the past 10 years, very few in the community have come to understand what OSAT is, despite that being its acronym. It is now OSAC, which will be even the same degree, if not more, confusing. It also shares many of the same first letters of Access Orangeville and Seniors. So it may seem like a very small request, but I think a name change to Sustainable Orangeville, for example, to reflect Heritage Orangeville, Access Orangeville, I think it's a little more appealing, it's a little more memorable. It's certainly an area we want people to remember and to focus on.
I like it.
And I think a simple name change would benefit that committee and the rest of the town. So very minor item, but I suppose that would be if possible.
Your suggestion change the name to Sustainable Orangeville.
Yes. So I propose that as part of the revised motion.
Okay. So adding then 2 friendly amendments to this motion. All in favor? Okay. Moving on, 10.3. Proposed Boulevard Maintenance Bylaw. Bylaw to regulate the maintenance and use of boulevards be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I have a problem with one of the items on this report. If you go to page 3, the second paragraph down, additionally, the owner of a fixture located on the boulevard, i.e. utility box, transformer box, hydro pole, newspaper vending box, I don't know how you can actually do that. If somebody puts graffiti on my Toronto Sun box, am I supposed to go out and spray it a different color? Like it's not our equipment, so I can't see how we can enforce that part of it. The rest of it I like. I just can't see how that can be enforced. Thank you.
Can we have a comment historically from Mr. Jones, maybe, on how these things were handled? Oh, sorry, Madam Clerk?
Actually, sorry, I'm just looking at this. If you go down one further, fixture owner means the owner of the fixture. So if it was a utility box, newspaper, vending box, we would go to the owner of that box. So if it was a newspaper box, we would go to them, not to the property owner.
Okay. Does that clarify it, Deputy Mayor? Okay.
But, sorry, if
Yes.
it was a personal fixture of the owner, a bench or something, then we would go back to the homeowner.
Very good. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So that was my concern as well. And I guess my thing is, I just want to make sure the public is aware of the penalties. I don't dispute the penalties, but they're quite high. They're very, very aggressive. So the average person, you know, would have severe consequences if they were in conflict with this. So the first offense is $50,000, and the second offense is $100,000.
Okay.
Up to, excuse me. Is that what you're
Madam
gonna say?
Clerk.
Either way, it's a long way from $5 to $50,000, so it's quite the range if that's the case.
It would be highly unusual for a judge to assess those fines first time out. I think that would be worst-case scenario when we have repeated offenders, probably of a corporate nature, not an individual.
And is this wording similar in other municipalities?
Yes, we did this on the advice of our prosecutor, and he's advised that it's the standard in the municipal act, the maximum in the municipal act, and it is standard wording.
Very well. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I'm assuming this would go through Mr. Jones, but with the exception, and this is just piggybacking on both Deputy Mayor McIntosh and Councillor Taylor's point, but hypothetically, you would have a utility box, the utility box artisan project that we have that's now underway. That particular piece is, in fact, agreed to with whomever owns, and that would be the exception, if I'm correct in saying so.
Yes, because that is funded and approved by council, so it's definitely not considered graffiti or defacing those utility
Got it.
boxes.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's have a vote. Motion here to accept this. Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Sherwood. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to 10.4, Court Security Agreement. A recommendation that report CPS TF 2019-14 dated March 18th. Court Security Agreement be received and the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to sign an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services. Any comments? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to make a big deal of this. I did speak with our CEO ahead of time about this issue, and I won't get into details, but I think that the group should understand that this does not cover our costs. So I've done the research. We will follow up offline, but people should understand that this is not fully supporting Orangeville's cost layout, and you know, kind of more to come on this. So
Thank
I
you
want to let it pass
for that
and not speak to it.
information. Thank you. Any other comments from councillors? Okay, may we have a motion to receive this? Councillor Sherwood, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. All in favor? Unanimously passed. 10.5, proposed building bylaw. A recommendation that report IS building BLDG 2019-001 proposed building would be received. The bylaw to regulate the administration and enforcement of the Building Code Act regarding the construction, demolition, or change of use of buildings. Any comments from councillors on this item? May I have a motion to accept this. Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Post. All in favor? Passed unanimously. 10.6, 1018, Waterworks Annual Summary Report. A recommendation that report IS ENV 2019-005, the 2018 Annual Summary Waterworks Reports be received, and that the Summary Report 2018 for Orangeville Drinking Water System be received, and that a copy of the Summary Report for the Orangeville Drinking Water System be forwarded to Credit Valley Conservation. Comments from Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Jones, I'm going to jump This relates very much to an item later in the agenda on sort of the salt management plan. So there's a number of areas identified in the numerous tables where we have exceedances of salt content. And I was wondering if you could comment perhaps on those instances as well as in the salt management report where we talk about moving perhaps to a brine solution. Could you just perhaps elaborate on that a little bit? I think the goal should be to be minimizing the amount of salt that makes its way into our aquifers and water systems. So I'll let you take it from there.
Mr. Jones.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Peters, I'd like to defer the question to Ms. McGinnity, if I could, please.
Ms. McGinnity.
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Peters. Yes, you are correct. There were numerous half-MAC exceedances for chloride. That is an identified issue in several of our drinking water supply wells, and we are addressing it through source protection program policies. It is an aesthetic objective, though, so it's not a health-related parameter. So in terms of reportability, we aren't required to do any reporting in terms of that parameter in terms of the Ministry of Environment and Climate or Conservation Parks, pardon me. Your second part of the question, I think, related to the salt management plan. Did you want to address that later in the meeting, or? Okay.
Let's save it for the salt management discussion. Is that all right? Okay. All right. Any further comments on this from council? No? Okay. So we need a motion to accept this report. Councillor Taylor, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. All in favor? Passed unanimously. 10.7, part lot control exemption application regarding 172 Parkinson Crescent, Cache Developments, Orangeville, Inc. is the applicant. That the report, part lot control exemption application, be received. Bylaw to exempt a portion of Block 92, Registered Plan 7M-70, designated as Parts 1 to 56, pursuant to Section 50-7 of the Planning Act. Any comments? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This is purely speaking from an emotive standpoint. I did follow up with Mr. Jones ahead of this meeting because I want to understand this. This portion that's being approved for with Cache Developments is in the Hanson Boulevard new area. I understand that we have to pass this because it's not related to the roads and whatnot in Hanson. But I do want to say to the people that live in that Hanson development that I'm getting to the point where I don't want to pass anything until the road goes through. So at some point, this council needs to stand up and put the darn bridge through and put the road through and get people have access to that subdivision. I guess I'm grandstanding because I know it's not related here, but at some point I'm just going to vote no just to be kind of symbolic as we go forward. Anyway, I'll vote yes to this, but because I understand it's not related, but it's annoying, and I'm sure the neighborhood is annoyed as well.
Oh, I'm getting many comments on that. However, as you know, it's a complicated matter. The fact that the land where this is going through is owned by the developer, and I know town staff is working on this, and there's a bridge to be built, so this is not, it's expensive. So I'm sure the developer needs to have their business plan in order before they move ahead with this, but I'm 100% in agreement. We need to get that opened up as soon as we possibly can. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Jones. Looking at the footprint here of this particular development, and again, you're the expert and I'm just the one that's looking at the footprint, and I'm just wondering, the entrance to this particular development as well as those townhomes that are there, again, it may be just the visual that I'm looking at that seem to make it look very tight. Have you worked with the developer to ensure that there's adequate room for vehicles to move in and out of some of those townhomes? And I'm looking at the one, I guess it's Part 32, and then also the other property that's further, I guess, to the, and I guess looking at it would be kind of the northwest section. It's just that it looked a little tight in there, and I'm not sure of the standards, and I probably should have got in touch with you ahead of time, but just looking at that, I just was more curious than anything else.
Mr. Jones?
Through your worship to Councillor Andrews, certainly as these developments proceed, we do look at these and they do meet standards that are required. It is important to keep in mind that the standards are somewhat different when this is going to be a road within a plan of condominium as opposed to a road that the municipality will ultimately own and maintain. It's maintained typically with different types of equipment and so forth, so the standards are somewhat less. But certainly this is something that staff and infrastructure services looks at as we move forward with these sorts of developments and approves them only when they meet the standards.
Okay, well, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Can we have a motion to accept this? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Peters. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Okay, moving on to item 11. 11.1, Orangeville Public Library, minutes from the January 23rd, 2019 meeting. Recommend that the minutes of this meeting listed above be received. Any comments from councillors on those minutes? We have Councillor Andrews.
Just wanted to compliment and I guess I can do so publicly, the choice of the chair and also the co-chair of that particular group with the library board. Good choices.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, may I have a motion to accept these minutes? Councillor Post, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Now we're moving into item 12 on our agenda, question period. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to ask a question of council? Seeing none, we'll move on to correspondence. So we have a number of reports that have been received. I think we'll start off with Councillor Taylor, who would like to make a comment.
So yes, thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to speak to 13.1. I'm not in these meetings. It's done at County Council. I understand yourself and the Deputy Mayor are. The Board of Management that is there for the provincial offensives, and in my mind, there's an overarching issue with how that whole process is. It's not being handled, but the setup that we have currently in place is causing some consternation. And at this point, Caledon isn't even at these meetings. They're part of it. I guess I'm not expecting a comment from you, but in my view, if you could take back to County Council, it would be my suggestion that we should simply take this over and tell Caledon that they're out. So that would be my opinion, and I'd appreciate if you take that back to the county.
I think it's more complicated than that, Councillor Taylor, because we've got the Ministry of the Attorney General really overseeing our court system. So I'm encouraged sitting beside County Councillor John Creelman, who, as you know, is a former Justice of the Peace, and he seems to have his thumb on this pretty good in protecting all of the residents of Dufferin County. So I'm very encouraged, and I would suggest maybe reach out to John, and talk to him, because as I said, he's going to bat for us, and he knows the lay of the land there with respect to the Ministry of Attorney General. So I'm listening to him intently whenever he talks about these matters in County Council, as I think Deputy Mayor McIntosh is as well. So, but thank you for bringing that up very much. Madam Clerk.
I just wanted to remind Council that you did receive a letter today from Mr. Creelman. It came too late to be added to the agenda, but it was sent to all members of Council.
I had a busy day today. I didn't see it, but I will review it in the morning.
To summarize, he suggested that the individual councils appoint a member of each council to the POA committee.
Oh, okay. Very good. Councillor, hold on. Were you up? I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yeah, I just want to echo the sentiments of the mayor. They are working on it. They're aware there's problems. Other councils haven't done anything about it, but they are working on it as we speak. So we like your comments, and we will acknowledge them.
Okay. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, I just wanted, Your Worship, go back to what Madam Clerk had mentioned today about receiving the correspondence from the Deputy Mayor Crewman and his thoughts about having a town, Orangeville Council member. Can we discuss that? Can that come back, or?
I think we need to digest it first, and I'd like to, you know, maybe bring it up at the next meeting. Madam Clerk? As far as procedure, I'm just asking for your advice here.
Certainly. Do you have any direction to staff, or you just put the same letter back on? Actually, what we could do is put this letter and Deputy Mayor Creelman's letter back on the next agenda for discussion by council.
Would I need to bring that as a notice of motion then?
No, that's fine. We can just put it on.
Okay. Any further questions on any of these items? I guess we'll go I'm sorry, Councillor Taylor. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you're just moving through the agenda, then I would like to just follow up on 13.4, if that's possible.
Yes.
Okay.
And I believe we have Mr. Osmond wants to talk about 13.4. So shall we listen to Mr. Osmond first and then you make a comment?
Thank you.
Mr. Osmond.
Thank you, Your Worship. Late last week, we received the second letter with respect to from the town of Mono, referring to the fire services agreement and the tier response. And given we just received that letter, what I would like to do is ask council approval to defer this letter, this item, and let us go back. And one of the things we want to do, we discussed it with the chief as well, is that we would like to take it back to the committee and revisit this whole question and talk about the agreement and how it impacts the agreement, the tier response impacts the agreement. And with council approval, we'd like to defer this and let us go back. And then secondly, we'd like approval to bring back a report to council in the meeting. We're aiming for a meeting of April 29th.
Okay. I'll be right to you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor or Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yeah, if we need a motion, I would certainly be willing to put that forward.
Okay. Let's have Councillor Taylor's comments first.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. For me, I would just like to have it broken out a little bit more so that I can understand what was presented. It wasn't in the package. I did follow up with members of Mono informally and asked for some qualification, but it's not quite clear what was given and not clear of the costs, and I just wanted a little more information. So I think exactly what Mr. Osmond is suggesting would be appropriate. It was hard to discern based on the information we were given.
My understanding is that overnight, the response would drop to a single tiered response, and therefore our fire department would not respond to overnight calls. Mr. Morden, is that correct?
Through Your Worship, that is correct. When we put into place our additional crews to where we're covering a 24/7 coverage area, we increased the level of service to medical calls in the evenings, and that changed the way it was billed out to the municipalities, that there was a slight increase to those services to them.
Right. So Mr. Osmond is going to determine those costs and come back to us soon. Mr. Osmond.
That's correct, Your Worship. And as Councillor Taylor alluded to, the fact is we want to put all the information in front of council because so we're all clear on the revenue side as well as how that actual A and B actually works. And so you're quite clear on the process and the agreement that's in place between the other participating municipalities.
Just to clarify again, so it's Mono, East Scariffrax, and Amaranth have asked for a reduction in the tiered response, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So we've got correspondence here from 13.1 to 13.5. I guess we have a motion 13.4. Right. So, right. So the motion was to take it back to the Fire Advisory Committee. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor, if council has no objection, what I can do is just note it on the next agenda, and that given that it's staff asking for this deferral, we will bring it back at an appropriate date.
Okay, fine.
And, sorry, and other than that, council can just receive all the correspondence items in one go.
With exception of 13.4, then, is that correct? Or,
No, you can still
Still
receive
receive
that.
that,
It's still
okay.
information for council.
of course, okay, great. So, may I have a motion then to receive 13.1 through 13.5? Okay, Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Peters, all in favor? Passed unanimously, thank you. Moving to 13.6, Township of East Scariffraxa, Orangeville Public Library non-resident membership fee increase to the correspondence items listed be received. Any comments on that? We have a motion to receive that. Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? Passed unanimously. 13.7, this is the Orangeville Business Improvement Area preliminary financial report. The recommendation that the correspondence from the OBIA dated February 20th, 2019 be received, and the 2018 preliminary financial report as at December 31st, 2018 be approved, and the 2019 budget as submitted be approved, and that the 2019-23 OBIA Board of Management slate be approved, and the OBIA Constitution as amended be approved. Any comments from council on these items? You have a motion to accept. Councillor Sherwood, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? Moving on to information items. 14.1, remuneration of councillors and local boards pending approval. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I guess I just want to share a little experience I had. So I've got this information that we had our salaries posted on there. The former councillors had their salaries posted on there. There was a tax-free portion that the former council got. This council will not get moving forward. And then there was an expense portion. And I was shocked to see that I'd already spent $1,500 of the taxpayers' money on my expense report. And I just think if you're reading along at home and looking, you're wondering why, it's really a tools of the trade. And I just want people to know what that is. So it's the laptops, which is the majority of the money, and I didn't realize that that's how it was allocated. So moving forward, I think you'll see a lot lower expense reports.
Unless you go to some conferences, which will be included in those expense reports, so thank you. Did you want to comment on that? Okay, so I guess let's have a vote on receiving 14.1. Anybody want to make that recommendation? Councillor Post, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? Okay, that's passed. 14.2, salt management plan. Councillor Peters, you would like to have a word.
Yes, thank you. Just some follow-up questions from earlier from Ms. McGinnity, if she doesn't mind entertaining the answers. This sort of thing interests me both from an environmental and an engineering perspective, as well as sort of efficiency. So I perhaps read this in more detail than many could bear to do, but a couple of questions that I had, I'll lay them out, and whatever answer you feel appropriate, whatever order there. So there's talk in there about moving to a brine solution. So the question on that is twofold. First, there is no specific timeline for that. Perhaps you could elaborate on when that may or may not be implemented and what steps need to be taken. The second part of that has to do with the equipment costs that may be associated with upgrading the salt machines or plows to accommodate that brine solution. And then the other thing that caught my interest and may actually engage the citizens a little bit is that it looks like we have the capability of monitoring the plows in real time for staff. And I think as a citizen or a member of the community, that will also be very interesting to know. The plan does lay out the priority areas and the sequence of events and that sort of thing, but has it ever been pondered to incorporate that into some of the public side of the GIS software or other alerts so that the community members could stay up to date on the progress? We've just endured a bit of a ridiculous winter in terms of freeze-thaw. The salt, I'm sure this year will be higher than last year by all accounts. So those are some of the questions I had regarding the salt management program. Thank you.
Ms. McGinnity.
Through your worship to Councillor Peters. Yes, The option of a brine solution is something that we identified as, I guess, an alternative that we want to look into and investigate further over the next few years. We did identify some timelines between 2019 and 2021 in which to do this evaluation on the feasibility of incorporating it. As you identified, there is a significant capital cost involved with upgrading the equipment and maybe purchasing brand new equipment in order to facilitate this type of, I guess, de-icing material. Also storage of the brine, where we would store it, and getting permits and things and finding suppliers and whatever we need to do in order to proceed with this. So I know a lot of municipalities are going this way, and we do see it as a opportunity to perhaps put much less salt on the roads, but it would primarily be used just for anti-icing, so it would be used prior to an event as opposed to dealing with the after effects of a winter event. So we would still need to continue to apply traditional road salt, or what we use in Orangeville thaw rocks and sand mixture, to the roads. Does that answer your first question? Okay. The second question, I believe, related to the real-time tracking of plows, and I'm not sure whether to defer this to Mr. Jones since it's outside of my realm.
Mr. Jones.
Through your worship to Councillor Peters, we do have the ability as it stands right now to review where our road plows as well as our sidewalk snow plows are in real time. We have discussed the possibility of making this available to the public, and it is something that we will be looking at going forward. Certainly, I think that from a public perspective, knowing where our plows are and where they have been would answer a lot of questions that we get during winter control events.
Right. It just works into our whole communications plan going forward, right? So, Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Jones, and a couple of questions. And again, this may express my naivety when it comes to this particular area, but again, out of curiosity, and again, through people who have also reached out to me. First one, this was not people of the community reaching out to me, but was the brine unit included or possibly included? I'm trying to recall from the 2019 budget, capital budget.
Mr. Jones.
Through your worship to Councillor Andrews, no, it wasn't.
Okay.
As Ms. McGinnity noted earlier, this is something that we are going to be looking into going forward. Ultimately, any decisions associated with moving towards using brine solution would be something that we would be coming back to council for, identifying what the cost as well as the benefits are before we move forward.
Okay. My other question was equipment washing 3.62. What happens with the untreated water going into the pond that you have there? Again, is it just, this is the water that when you're washing the vehicles, it just goes into the retention pond that you have? It just sits there, or is that somehow taken out at some point to some other location?
Mr. Jones.
Through your worship, I'd like to defer that one to Ms. McGinnity, if I could, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Ms. McGinnity. Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Through your worship, hi. I can sort of see you. Yes, unfortunately, that does just run to us. It's a stormwater management pond, which does flow to the nearby creeks and marshlands. So there is no treatment of the salt in terms of that. And that's pretty standard in terms of what you're seeing. All runoff from the roads just goes directly to water courses, nearby water courses, stormwater management ponds.
Okay, thank you.
I guess further to that, though, if you noted that we were looking to do some upgrades at our facilities there, so that would allow us to do all future equipment washing indoors and to allow us to capture that in, I guess, a sanitary sewer system instead of directly to the storm sewers.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, just as a quick follow-up to the brief conversation we had on the high sodium levels in the well reports. While I recognize it is an aesthetic issue and we are still below the required values, I guess it's more of a comment. I think, to encourage more people to be using their tap water or at-home systems, anything we can do to encourage those levels to stay at a minimum, I think is better for both the health of the citizens, if not directly, just sort of in their usage patterns and how they interact with the water. We certainly want to move away from purchasing water wherever possible. And, you know, I'm a big proponent of the tap and anything that has to do with the aesthetics of that water, meaning taste and appearance, I think we should, you know, be moving towards. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. All right, so now, does this lead into 14.3, the well 10 chloride study update? Is there any questions there, councillors? No? Okay. Then perhaps we can lump those two together, 14.2 and 14.3, and have a motion to accept those two reports. Councillor Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Peters. All in favor? Passed unanimously. On to the 14.4, 2018 Water Pollution Control Plan Annual Report. Any questions from councillors? Seeing none, may I have a motion to accept? Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Post. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. 14.5 is Credit Valley Conservation Resolution and 2019 Budget. Recommendation that the information items listed above be received. Which is, oh, okay, sorry. We'd already passed some of them. So 14.5, Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just very brief, now sitting on the board and having been walked through this at a deeper level at Credit Valley Conservation, I'm very encouraged by the work they're doing and continue to do. You know, anyone who's interested in those initiatives should certainly reach out to the CVC. Their interaction with the town is very positive, and again, their budget is solid, and they're having a gala in May as a big fundraiser as part of their initiative, and if anyone's looking for a fine evening, that would be something worth looking into as well.
Right. Are your meetings open to the public, and where are they held?
Yes, they are. They're held at the CVC headquarters, which is on Old Dairy Road in the north end of Mississauga, and they are, I might get this wrong, second Friday of the month from 9 till noon.
And they are open to the public?
They are, yeah.
Very good. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. One of the comments I'm just trying to understand in this, and perhaps Councillor Peters can help clarify this. I see that the levy amount indicated for the town of Orangeville, I'm glad to see that the rate increase for Orangeville itself is less than the 3.55 overall increase. But am I to understand that our levy has gone up 2.46%, or has it gone up 2.27%? Perhaps you can clarify the difference between Table 1 and Table 2?
Councillor Peters.
Thank you. I'm just looking it up here. Through you to Councillor Sherwood, the levy increase, as I understand it, is based, you know, much like the budgeting process in town, they take the total proposed and divide it amongst the municipalities that comprise the CVC, and I believe that's done by population, so you will see fluctuations as certain areas grow and certain areas grow less. I suppose our population increase obviously less so than Mississauga or Brampton, for example, but that was to buy time so I could get to the right table here. So you're talking about
Page 349 and 350.
So tables 1 and 2?
There's two different, I just want to clarify on the...
Yeah, certainly. I'm just looking at it here. So that's the 227 over 2018. 246. Yeah, I may have to get back to you on that. I can certainly get back to you. I don't want to hold up the rest of our discussions here, but yeah.
Okay. So may we have a motion to accept this report? Councillor Post, seconded by Councillor Peters. All in favor? Okay. Moving on to 14.6. I'm sorry. So we're on to 15. Notice of motion. Right. 15.1, Transit Review Task Force. This is a motion that I've brought forward, that the council strike a transit review task force to review and make recommendations to council regarding transit options for the town of Orangeville. And the task force conduct a comprehensive review of transit issues and options, including but not limited to advertising on transit buses, county transit, transfer station issues, Uber, cleanliness of buses, the routes that the current transit system runs, Sunday service, taxi service issues, wheel-trans service, the needs of youth, seniors, commuters, and new residents, and demand responsive approaches to public transit. And the committee include representation from council, local business owners, and the community, and that staff be directed to report to council with recommended terms of reference and membership for a transit review task force. Any comments from councillors on this motion? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. You know, still, we're new to council. Obviously, we've all paid attention to these issues for a long period of time. And I feel like we've circled the wagons on this. I feel like I know this information. I feel the problem, though, is others don't know the information. I'm supportive of what you're trying to do. It's just, it feels like we've already got what we need, and maybe the committee isn't necessary. That said, I don't think we brought enough followers along with us on the journey. So maybe people don't understand what we're trying to accomplish with the transit system, and potentially your motion will help bring others along in the journey to where I sit, which is, hey, let's go to resolution. The report, I'd like to say and throw some compliments out. The report that Mr. Lackey wrote is excellent. The summary is spot on to where we are. I just struggle with the idea of the committee, but at the same time I want to be supportive and bring it forward. I'm at the point where I just want to make a decision and go forward. But I get that we need to bring others along. Yeah. So I applaud the effort. I just...
Yeah, I think, you know, what this is going to do is probably introduce some of these new ideas, new technologies, for instance, that Uber has been offering in other municipalities. I think we need to look at that as the town grows and compare what's happening in other municipalities to what we have here to see if we can improve our system and the current public transit system. We do need to move forward, I think, with some of the recommendations that have been made, such as the transfer station and other things. So I just think issues like taxi service and all these things, we need to just take another look at it all, and I hope we can, over the next several months, come to some conclusions that we can move forward on these issues. Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I understand completely what Councillor Taylor is saying. As you mentioned, though, this does take into everything from taxis to Ubers. I don't believe the other committee maybe looked at those items. This seems more extensive. Also, one of the most common complaints I get by emails or phone is either taxis or buses. I think it's an issue that hasn't been put to bed yet, for lack of a better word, and I think this committee would hopefully get to the bottom of it.
Thank you. Councillor Peters.
Just quickly, I agree that the broad nature of the mandate is needed. There are issues that were either deferred or claimed to be solved that perhaps have not been. We haven't seen the effects of a good solution, some of those being listed here. So I think this goes beyond the transfer station in this case, and I support the concept.
Thank you. Any further comments from councillors? Okay. So I've made a motion. May we have a seconder for this? Deputy Mayor McIntosh. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. 15.1.1, Transit Update Review. This is for information of council. We're going to receive this. May I have a motion? Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Post. Any comments from councillors on this report? Seeing none, let's vote on this. All in favor? Unanimously accepted. Thank you. 15.2. This is a proposed four-way stop at College and Fieldgate, which is proposed by Councillor Post. I'm going to read this. Whereas the protection of the safety of our citizens on residential streets is of paramount concern for our residents, and whereas there have been numerous vocal concerns from residents about safety and traffic safety on College Avenue. Whereas there are 3 schools in the neighborhoods with walking students, St. Andrews, Credit Meadows, and St. Benedict, And whereas the curve in the road on College creates a blind spot that when combined with speed that make the area a dangerous place for pedestrians, therefore be it resolved, a four-way stop be implemented immediately at the intersection of College Avenue and Fieldgate as a measure to enforce traffic calming in the neighborhood. Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Jones. When Courtney Crescent finally does open up, do you foresee more traffic possibly coming onto the street?
Mr. Jones.
Through you, Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor McIntosh, I foresee a significant increase in the amount of traffic on College Avenue when that happens, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We heard earlier from citizens that are worried about the safety of our streets, and I completely agree. In this case, if pedestrian crossings are the issue, I think there are perhaps other solutions. There's an area where the schools on the north and south side of College, there's some footpaths there. That's obviously a well-traveled area. That may be a more appropriate location for a crossing, for example. I hesitate to make, with all respect to the residents and the councillors that have put together the motion, I hesitate to make a knee-jerk reaction to the situation, and I'd rather look at either that intersection or that neighborhood in greater detail so that we could find a solution that works not just for the single intersection but for the traffic flow on a larger scale. So at this point, I'm not prepared to support it.
Very good. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm just going to make a comment here. I'm not going to be supporting the motion for the four-way stop. And by all means, no disrespect to my fellow councillors in the motion, I'm very concerned about the protection of the safety of our citizens in that area as well. However, I'm kind of jumping it a little bit here with respect to the information that's being provided to council by staff. And what I would like to see before we actually implement this four-way stop is to take into consideration one of the recommendations from Mr. Jones's staff to do a traffic data study and report back to council in that area. And secondly, I'm wondering if perhaps, Mr. Jones, you could answer this. We have located in town 2 speed radar feedback signs. That's on Blind Line by St. Benedict's School and on Town Line by Princess Margaret School. I would like to know, would they not be effective in that area? Like if you're worried about traffic calming, which it kind of looks to me like that's what we're trying to do. I don't know if there's been enough incidents of accidents in that area to justify a four-way stop, but I'm wondering, something like that I find very effective. I know myself, if I'm driving and that thing starts flashing at me, first thing I do is I check to see if, am I breaking the law? So I find that helps with traffic calming. I could be wrong, but could you clarify that? And what's the cost of installing one?
Mr. Jones.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Sherwood, certainly the types of signs that you have referred to can be effective in getting people to slow down. One of the considerations that staff would have when implementing that sort of solution would be finding the right location for it. I think that nobody wants one of these things flashing immediately in front of their house, so we would be looking for a location that was somewhat less sensitive to that. My understanding is that they are typically implemented in pairs, one facing in each direction, and to purchase and install these, I believe the cost to be in the order of $10,000.
Do we have any in inventory by any chance?
Through Your Worship, no, we do not.
So just to further act on that, like I say, it's not that I'm not mindful of the protection. I just will not be supporting the particular motion to put a four-way stop there right now. I would be putting a further motion to ask staff to do a traffic data study if it fails.
Thank you. Councillor Post.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, and just for information, there's a few things about this specific motion that I think I need to make clear. And This definitely wasn't a knee-jerk reaction to do this. We've spoken to upwards of 24 residents in the area, on College, on Fieldgate, on Elaine, and there's a number of issues that are brought forward, and some of them are the number of vehicles traveling that way, which they know is going to increase as soon as that barricade is opened. So some of that is in anticipation of that. Secondly is the neighboring of the schools, which I think is also really important to note, that there is a large number of pedestrian traffic that's going through that area. The other thing is that intersection has a blind spot where Fieldgate meets College, and the concern is the visibility of being able to turn off a Fieldgate onto College, and that presenting an issue. So it's not just speed, it's not just pedestrian traffic, it's not just one thing or the other, it's a combination of all things, which is why I came to the conclusion, and along with my fellow councillor Taylor, and residents, that this was what they were looking for. There were some residents who expressed that maybe they wanted speed bumps or other things in that measure, but the vast majority, and we've got residents that I've spoken to anyways who have been...
Questions. Number one, do you have an example where you have these flashing signs that would be placed in non-school areas? Because typically where I've seen them installed is in the school zone area. Do you have any examples that you might know of, or again, where an opportunity to report back to council might be the best thing? But again, Mr. Jones, I'll wait to have you
Mr.
answer
Jones.
that.
Through your worship to Councillor Andrews, there are no examples in town where they aren't located near a school. However, there is one on Airport Road north of Highway 89 that I can think of.
Yes.
Near the old Stanton store, where there is one that's not located near a school. It's not in town, but it is on a county road.
Okay. And again, to my colleagues that sit on the other side of the table here, I've had, again, a number of calls as well as emails for people who are concerned and who felt that they have not been heard. But I also appreciate Councillor Sherwood's point, because again, some of the information that we've received here prior to our council meeting has provided some clarity on process, observation, and maybe this might be an opportunity for us to receive a little more information to provide some clarity to our decision moving forward. And this is, again, not to in any way take away from the importance of the messages that I have heard, and I know that Councillor Taylor and Councillor Post have heard. Again, I personally take this seriously because, again, you know, we're close to schools, we're close to you know, people that are walking, and you know, just concerned about the increase, as Mr. Jones has indicated, increase of traffic that will happen in due time. And will increase substantially. But I feel that we need a little more information to help us out in making a decision too as well. So,
Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just would like to echo Councillor Post's comments, and that is this has been going on for years. This neighborhood has not been heard. We haven't made any headway on this matter. I would suggest that one of the reasons a lot of us ran is we wanted to make a difference in the community, and we wanted to make a difference in a timely manner. I don't see any reason to go back and relook at this. Let's just make a decision and go forward and make a difference. We know there's an issue. The issue is not going to go away with another study. I would like to see this implemented tonight, and I'd like to move on to the next issue that we're going to solve and make better. This is going to get worse for College. We all know it's going to get worse for College. Let's solve this tonight. Let's say yes and get this done.
Any further comments? Okay. I'm just, you know, we've had quite a bit of information about traffic studies tonight, and about the reliance on our staff and their knowledge, and also the traffic manual, Ontario Traffic Manual, and other items. I'm struggling a little bit, as Councillor Andrews is, with all of the information, and you know, I appreciate what Councillor Post and Councillor Taylor said, but anecdotal things, I'd rather see some further study on this personally, and a deferral of another, you know, month or so to get that information. I would hope there wasn't going to be any, you know, negative consequences as a result of delaying this, but I think we have to rely on our staff to provide us with all of the information that we need to make these decisions, notwithstanding the fact that college and is going to get busier, clearly, in the coming years. So my thoughts are to defer this to staff and to revisit it in the very near future. That would be my recommendation here. So anyway, we have a motion on the floor to vote on by Councillor Post, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? Opposed? So the motion is defeated. But I would now like to make another motion, if I may, that we ask town staff to do a further in-depth study of this intersection and come back to us in the very near future with further technical information that will allow us to fully weigh this matter. May I have a seconder for that motion? You wish to talk? Okay, go ahead. Councillor Sherwood.
Yeah, Your Worship, that was one of the things I said I was going to put a motion in, and thank you for doing that. I would just like to ask as well, if staff does do the traffic study, that they also look at providing type of feasibility to use one of those traffic, the speed radar, the speed radar signs, because that might be, you know, $10,000 that spent that could really be very effective. So I would like that as well included in your motion.
Fair enough. Any further comments? Can I have a seconder for this? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Taylor.
Frustratingly and respectfully, this has been done before. So we're cycling back. You know, if you followed council for years, these things have been done. So, you know, I don't want this to fall apart. I want it to go forward, but we're repeating history here by having staff go back and redo things they've already done.
Fair enough. Councillor Sherwood.
Perhaps Mr. Jones can clarify, has there been a traffic study done in that area, and can you tell me when it was done last?
Mr. Jones.
Through you, Your Worship, I know that there have been complaints about this intersection. I don't have a specific date when a study was done on this in the past, no.
Okay, so one more. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. My understanding is the study was done in 2011 or 2014.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Councillor Sherwood is seconding my motion to ask staff for further clarity and a traffic study on this intersection for council's further review in the near future. And I'm just going to ask council, is this something that we could have back within 30 days, Mr. Jones?
Through you, Your Worship, I believe that we could probably have it done in that period of time, yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll amend that motion to ask council to have an answer, or have a report back to us within 30 days for further review. All in favor? Okay, unanimous, thank you. Yes. Okay. Any new business? Councillors, anybody would like to speak to? Okay, so we have some confirming bylaws here. I'm sorry, Councillor Taylor. Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I did not write this out, but I wanted to let council know ahead of time. We still have unfinished business with the election sign bylaw, and I've been working on a motion for that, and I just wanted to let everybody know that I'll have that ready for a notice of motion for the next meeting and for your consideration and debate.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move then to item 19 on the agenda, recommendation that bylaws listed below be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed, numbered sequentially, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign them accordingly. A bylaw to amend traffic bylaw 78-205 to establish a reduced speed limit in community safety zone on Spencer Avenue and Alder Street. And B, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Orangeville at its regular council meeting held on March 18th, 2019. May I have a motion Councillor Andrews, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. All in favor? We're now at an adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Post. All in favor? Thank you.